The year 1813 comes to an end with a fairly bizarre little raid by General Adams of the Georgia militia. And General Adams decides to make an overland expedition from the populated areas of Georgia overland through Georgia and the Creek Nation to the Tallapoosa River. And he has a sizable force, but not a huge force, like the armies of Jackson or Floyd or even Claiborne have commanded. It's a daring raid because the Red Stick forces in the area he's heading to far outnumber him. But he decides, I can do it, and so I've got some time in the enlistment terms of the men I command, so here we go. So he heads off. He expects to be reinforced by some of the Big Warriors Creeks commanded by William McIntosh as he's on the way. So off he sets. He goes to the Chattahoochee River. He crosses the Chattahoochee River and heads into the Creek Nation. William McIntosh doesn't join him because McIntosh reaches his trail and realizes that the area that General Adams is heading to is thick in the middle of Red Stick country. And there are so many Red Sticks there that really Adams is heading into severe, serious danger. And McIntosh, probably in the better part of valor, just decides, I'm going to turn around and just head back home. I don't want to be a part of this one. And so leaves General Adams on his own just to head on. Well, Adams reaches the town of, we would call it New York. New York is the way that New York is the way that the Creeks pronounce it. It's named after the Treaty of New York, which was signed by Alexander McGillivray with George Washington, back in the 1790s era. This town is located on the Tallapoosa River, and it overlooks an area that most who are familiar with the Creek Wars would recognize today as the Horseshoe Bend of the Tallapoosa River. And this is an area where all of the towns in that vicinity have assembled, and they've built a new town, and they are beginning to build a fortification. And this is going to become the scene of a famous battle in about, 3.5, 4 months late, time. But at this point, it is really just becoming a gathering point for an enormous body of Red Stick warriors under a chief named Minowa. And Minowa is there, and he's gathering as many Red Stick warriors as he can, and war chiefs and fighters. And so here comes General Adams, and he reaches New York, and finds no one there. But he can hear the sounds of an enormous body of Red Sticks. And he becomes a bit alarmed and realizes that there may be more Red Sticks than he has soldiers. And so he orders his men to dry camp meaning no fires, no sound. And so he advances up to the banks of the Tallapoosa River, which are very high there overlooking the river. And as he approaches, he can hear even more Red Sticks and realizes that he has gotten himself into serious trouble. Now, this means that General Adams has become the first American general to reach the Horseshoe Bend. And he's done this nearly 4 months before Andrew Jackson. And this becomes even more significant when we remember that on Jackson's first attempt to get there, he's driven back by forces led by Minowa, by the Prophet Francis, and by Peter McQueen. And in fact, his army is almost torn to pieces at the second battle that takes place during that campaign. Adams, he puts scouts along the river there, but he tells them, keep quiet, do not fire a shot. But let me know if you see any of these Red Sticks start to cross the river. We're going to try to get a little bit of rest, and then we're going to withdraw out of here, hopefully with our scalps intact. And so he goes back to the main camp. All of a sudden, he hears a shot. He's hearing Red Stick war cries. He's hearing noise from across the river. He can see Red Sticks on the other side. They're moving back and forth. They're looking for a place to cross the river. Fortunately, the river is at flood stage. And he sees smoke from a musket. He asks the soldier who fired the shot, "Why did you fire the shot?" And the soldier says, "I saw an Indian." And, you know, he's basically like, "Of course you saw an Indian. There are Indians all over the place. I told you not to shoot." And so he goes running back. He's getting his men up. He's telling them, "We've got to go now." And so by some miracle, he gets his men out of there. Minowa cannot find a way across the river because the Tallapoosa is so flooded. Otherwise, to this day, we might remember General Adams in the vein of Custer, because he became so near losing an entire army at Horseshoe Bend that day. And we might remember Horseshoe Bend very, very differently in American history.